see, looks like we've got separation now between that back crossover pipe and this left-hand exhaust manifold. See, I can pull it apart just a little bit. So this heat shield on this exhaust manifold is held on by, this is the heat shield here, it's held on by 3 nuts, 1 on top and 2 on the bottom. Here's the top one, and it looks really small. It looks like it's really deteriorated. I can't imagine it was that small originally. So I'm going to have to find a socket that'll fit that, probably an undersized socket of what it really is supposed to be, and see if we can back that one off. Looks like a 9mm socket's going to fit this otherwise undersized nut. Nope. Just rounding off. I know that's a sacrificial nut anyway. So, let's try something different. Plan B, vice grips. I've already resigned myself to having to replace some of these exhaust fasteners, so not worried about tearing up the nut. It turned a little bit. Oh, there it is. Pretty torn up. We'll see what we can do with the other 2. The front nut holding on that heat shield is right up here. I think I can show it to you better with my mirror. There it is. Tucked up right underneath there. This nut's in a whole lot better shape, and it's actually a true 10mm. So back under the truck now, and we're right beside that same exhaust flange that we removed that nut before. And there, right beside it, or below it, or in front of it, whatever you want to call it, is the last nut holding that heat shield on. Well, we'll see if it is a true 10mm, if I can remove that. I'm going to use a long extension and go through the wheel opening over the frame to see if I can back that nut off. I think the heat shield is now free to go. A little messy. Alright, let's see if we can get this left-hand exhaust manifold off. It's got 6 bolts holding it on. 1 in the front, 1 in the middle, and 1 toward the back there. There are also 3 likewise underneath, which we'll try after we get these top ones. I'm going to start with the top ones first because I'm a glutton for punishment. We'll wait for the hard part later. Let's see if these are going to budge. They're a little bit rusty. The nuts are fine, but the studs look a little rusty. That's not bad. Of course, this is the easiest one. So the whole stud came out along with the nut rather than the nut coming off of the stud. Guess that's all right. All right, so that one's a bit more stubborn. I'm going to use my cheater bar on my ratchet. Let's see what that feels like. Looks like this stud's coming out too. Two down. Sure would be nice to have an air-powered ratchet right now. Wouldn't have to do this the manual way. Alright, there's the third one. I'm kind of glad these studs are coming out after all, because then when I get the other 3 out, I should just be able to take the whole manifold and slide it forward off of the crossover pipe back there, rather than having to remove the crossover pipe on the other end to give me some more play and lift it off of these studs. So this way I'll just be able to slide it laterally. Alright, let's move on to the bottom ones. I think I'll tackle the front lower bolt on the exhaust manifold. Here's the front of the exhaust manifold. I'll show you my mirror again. Look right under the front there. You should see that one nut stud holding the front edge of that thing on there. Just the nut that time. Don't know how much you can see there with my flashlight on it, but that's the center lower bolt with a 1/2 inch universal joint and a 14mm socket and a long extension. That extension's coming down here inside the left front wheel, and I'm going to put my ratchet on the end of that extension and probably the cheater bar on the end of the ratchet to see if I can back off that nut. There we are, number 5. We'll use the same technique on this last one on the back. Number 6. All right, let's see what's going to happen now. Ooh, I got that one stud up front. I can clear that front stud. Oh yeah. This guy looks to be in good shape. This port, by the way, I believe is where the optional EGR pipe might go on some models, but this one didn't have it. Let's get these gaskets out of here now. This is a multi-layered metal one. And there's the one back here on the crossover pipe. Let's move on to removing the cylinder head cover from this side. Luckily, this is a much easier procedure than the exhaust manifold. It's just 10 bolts and their washers. And they're definitely not very tight. They're not supposed to be. These washers have a little rubber backing on them. And this should just lift straight off. One left-hand valve cover with gasket still intact. Back over to the right-hand side of the engine, the passenger side. I'm going to go ahead and remove the valve cover. I'm still not sure if I'm going to take the head off of this side and inspect the head gasket, since that's not where my problem is, and this is a budget job. Normally you would go ahead and do that while you're in this far, but we'll see where it goes from here. But I'm going to go ahead and remove the valve cover at least, so I can just do some inspection and comparison of the valve train. So to do that, I need to remove the coil packs. And then remove again the 8 bolts that are holding on the valve cover. I'm going to look a little further here on the right-hand side of the engine and the valve train here on this side. There are alignment marks on the back side of these two camshaft gears. and they're supposed to align with each other so that they know that the teeth are meshing at the proper place. And I'll show you those in a second. There's some dots on the backhand side. On the right-hand side, the factory service manual says to align 2 dots to 2 dots. There's 2 dots on this gear and 2 dots on this gear. Well, in the top dead center position, they're 180 degrees out, so we have to rotate the cams so that those timing marks, or not timing marks, but the alignment marks need to be together here, right where the gears mesh. Now, before you freak out, we can turn this and it's going to be okay, because the 5VZ-FE engine is not an interference engine, meaning that if your timing belt breaks and the valve train stops, some valves may be open and sticking down into the cylinder. The piston will come up and hit those valves in an interference engine, and then you'll end up bending valves and doing a lot of damage if your timing belt breaks. A non-interference engine means that even when the valves are open, they're not sticking out so far as that the piston heads are going to hit those. So we're okay to rotate both the engine and the camshafts independently. So what we need to do is rotate this drive camshaft 180 degrees until those marks line up, and then I'll show you those in a second. And I can feel the tension, spring tension on those valve springs as the lobes push the valves up and down. Now, the reason they want us to rotate this 180 degrees until the double marks line up, you can see the tension was just released, is that in this position we are not compressing any of the valve springs, and we'll be able to lift out the cams without having to compress those springs. Now let me show you those alignment marks. So looking now where the gears mesh, I'm going to show you with my mirror behind toward the firewall where those gears mesh. And you can see that there's 2 dots on each gear. On the upper one, as pictured here, there are 2 dots on the tooth, and on the lower one, or the outboard one, there's 2 dots on the valley. But what's really concerning that I've observed here on this truck is that they don't line up. They're 1 tooth off. You see that? They should be directly in line with each other. And I'm not sure if that was done on purpose by somebody or if that was a mistake, but that's going to throw the intake valves and the exhaust valves like 1 tooth off in terms of the timing. So I'm contemplating whether or not to leave them this way because the truck seemed to run all right, or to go ahead and correct it according to the factory service manual. So we'll have to think about that. Back to the driver's side now. Since that's the head I'm going to remove at least first. We have a similar situation with the gears and the alignment on the camshafts on this side. So unlike the passenger side, the factory service manual says on this side to line up the single dots so that the camshafts are in a position so that they're not compressing the valve springs. And look what I found on the driver's side. There are my single dots, 1 on the top, on the tooth, 1 on the bottom or outboard cam, the exhaust cam being in the valley. But look again, they're 1 tooth off again with respect to each other. So I don't know if that's just coincidence or somebody goofed up the last time they were in here working on this engine. I'm inclined to correct that, especially since I'm going to be taking this side apart for sure. And I'll probably go ahead and take the cams out on the passenger side and correct that too. One other thing to mention, these are not timing marks. This is very important. And a lot of people get this confused apparently from having read the forums and a lot of the questions posted. These are not timing marks. These do not correspond to the camshaft sprocket timing marks with the crankshaft timing mark when you're doing the timing belt timing adjustments. These simply are alignment marks to make sure that the 2 camshafts are aligned with each other and their teeth are meshing at the proper spot. So that's what makes me concerned about these being 1 tooth off. I want to get the camshafts correct with respect to each other, and it has nothing to do with timing of the engine. Looking back here at the factory service manual, I think I've discovered what's actually going on with those alignment marks. As part of this procedure, you're supposed to install a service bolt to secure the sub-gear to the main gear. They're sandwiched together, and there's a torsion spring of some sort between those two. And whoever put these cams back in apparently skipped this step by loading up that torsion spring and putting in that service bolt. So here again is the exhaust camshaft and the gears on that camshaft, and you can see that there's a split right between those two gears. You can see that little line, the split between those two gears. This is the sub gear on this side, and this is the main drive gear on this side. And there's some kind of torsion spring between them and a spring clip out here holds them together. And that service bolt is supposed to go right through this hole in the sub gear to the main gear. And the main gear side is threaded, and this is just an open hole. But as you can see, the sub gear and the main gear aren't lined up such that I can run that bolt through. The bolt hole, the threaded hole on the main gear, is one tooth off. It's down this way, and it should be up here. That explains why the sub gear meshes correctly with the gear here on the intake side, but the dots on the back side don't line up, and they're one dot off. In fact, they're one dot off in this direction, the same direction as this hole is one tooth off. So I think what happened is they didn't load up that torsion spring, put in the service bolt before they installed this camshaft. That would explain why the gears aren't lined up right. So we'll correct that when we put it back together. So to remove the exhaust camshaft, we need to remove the 8 bearing cap bolts, and we need to do that uniformly. And here is the sequence: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we'll gradually loosen those a little bit at a time so we can release the tension on the whole camshaft. Here are the bearing caps. We're going to remove these bolts in that correct order, little by little. Just crack it loose. Now we keep going a little bit more each time. Now I'm just going to remove them and remember their orientation. I'm going to keep their bolts in the holes. Now we should be able to remove the camshaft itself. Here we can see now how this service bolt hole is supposed to go all the way through. There's a little corner of it that it goes all the way through, but it certainly doesn't line up with the back side. You can see how that threaded hole does not line up with the service bolt hole, which is one tooth off in this direction. So we'll see if we can address that when we reassemble it. The intake camshaft has 5 bearing caps that need to come off, and the bolt sequence is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. These front two are a little bit stuck, so I'm going to get my plastic face hammer here. There's that one. This front bearing cap, I believe, encompasses the this portion of the housing and the cam oil seal. I'm going to get under here with a rag so I don't damage anything. Let's see if I can just get that to move. There it goes. Which is stuck on the oil seal. There's the oil seal. So we'll replace that upon reassembly. And the intake camshaft. Alright, so before we remove this head, let's go ahead and get those spark plugs out. Alright, now we're getting down to it. We're about to have some fun and get this cylinder head off. Here on the driver's side, the first thing we do is remove this 8mm hex bolt up here toward the front of the head. On the passenger side, it's back here. But we're working on the driver's side now, so we're going to remove that hex bolt first. So here's that hex bolt here on the driver's side, right down there in that little well. So our cylinder head is held on by 8 12-point headed bolts, and they need to be removed uniformly in this order. So we don't want to risk warping or cracking the head, so they have to be removed in that sequence and gradually. Get a better look at those 12-point bolts before we start. We got 2 there, 1 on the top, 1 on the bottom. Going back, there's a couple more. And then there's 8 in total. So when we talk about 6-point bolts and 6-point sockets, here's the difference. On the left here we have a standard 6-point socket, and on the right is a 12-point socket. You can clearly see the difference. The 12-point socket has 12 little indentations, and the 6-point socket has 6. I like to use a 6-point socket whenever possible. Less chance of rounding off the head of a bolt. In the rare cases where you have a 12-pointed headed bolt, you need the 12-point socket. And for regular use, a 12-point socket works just fine because you can actually put that on a 6-pointed headed bolt just fine. Observing the proper sequence, let's start with number 1. Number 2 is down here. Just loosening him a little bit. Number 3 is above number 2. Now just repeat the sequence, starting back at number 1. So now they feel like they're loose enough to remove by hand. Now it's recommended to replace the head bolts, but in case I end up reusing them anyway, which is probably bad practice, I'm going to make sure I at least keep them in their same orientation. To do that, I've made up this card, and I've cut 8 holes in it, and I've labeled them with their sequence so I can put them back where they came from. And make sure the washer comes out with it. And there are my bolts. Alright, so let me gain a little bit more room. Let's see if I can suspend some of these wires and hoses and things a little further out of the way. Alright, so how hard is it going to be to lift off this head?